In this video, we are going to create a set of APIs using Flask and SQL, and then we are going to create an Android app which is able to consume these APIs using Android Studio and Kotlin. We'll now move on to a computer screen and we'll get started with all this. So the very first step that I'm going to take is going to my Linode account. So let me go to my Linode account, linode.com, and from there, I'm going to spin up a Linode and then we'll set up a Flask app there. So let me log into my Linode account first. And as you can see, I can create a Linode. Let's create a Linode. I'm going to create a Ubuntu 22 Linode. So let's go for Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, which has some long-term support. And let's go for a 2 GB Linode. You can even go for Nanode. I think Nanode is also something which will be able to do this, but let's go for Nanode, and let's also set up a root password. So I'm setting up a very simple root password, and I'll simply click on create Linode, and let me choose a region as well. Let's choose Mumbai, India, and click on create Linode. If you are using this Linode for some serious purpose, make sure that the password that you are setting is very strong, because strong passwords are very difficult to hack. But if you are using some simple password, or if you're not using SSH authentication, it is going to be problematic for you from security standpoint. So let's wait for this Linode to provision. I'm waiting for it to provision. So the next step is going to be setting up of a Flask app. So let's set up a Flask app, and then we'll upload a Flask app to Linode. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'll say Linode Flask Notes app APIs. Okay, so APIs. And let's open this in VS Code. So in order to open this in VS Code, I'll say new terminal add folder, and I'll say code space dot, which will open this folder in VS Code. And as you can see, the folder has been opened in VS Code. Let's create a new Flask file, main.py, and I'll simply use Google search. I'll say Flask boilerplate and Flask. Let's search for Flask, and we will get the Flask boilerplate. So this is the Flask boilerplate, which I'm going to copy and paste into my application. And let's say app.run and debug is equal to true. And let's run this Flask app and let's see how it performed. But why is it saying name n is not defined? I think I selected something and then I started my Flask app, which is why it was showing this error. But now the error has been fixed, which means that it is working. Wow, awesome. The next thing that we are going to install is Flask SQLAlchemy. Flask SQLAlchemy is a package which is used to create, or rather connect MySQL to our Flask app. So let's go to quick start. Let's check the documentation. Let's install it first. So in order to install Flask SQLAlchemy, I'll simply say pip install -u Flask SQLAlchemy, and I'll have to use pip3 because I'm using Mac, and pip3 is how I use my Python pip. Okay, now we are going to define a new model. Let's define a new model, and let's go back, and let's also import Flask SQLAlchemy. And also I'm going to create this as a new tab. I really love this feature of VS Code. You can create or convert your terminal to tabs, which is awesome. Let's close this terminal and let's paste the Flask SQLAlchemy import. And before that, we'll have to simply create a new model, and let's say db.create all. But before we do db.create all, I want to make sure that we are importing SQLAlchemy properly. So let's import SQLAlchemy first. App is equal to this. And what is this db? db is SQLAlchemy, create the extension. So sometimes all you need to do is go to the documentation, copy paste everything, and then customize the model. So in order to create a Notes app, I'll say class Note, and Note will have an ID, and Note will have a title, and Note will have a description. Okay, so ID, title, description. So we have these three things in our Notes app, and we can say app.config SQLAlchemy, and let's connect it to a SQLite database. So let's connect it to SQLite database. Let's paste it here, app.config, and let's move it at the top. So app.config SQLAlchemy database URI is equal to this. And let's say whenever somebody visits hello world, we want to create all the models. Now in order to create all the tables, we'll copy this and we will paste it here, and we will restart our application. So let's restart the application. Okay, so it says that Flask app is not registered with the SQLAlchemy instance. So the problem is that I forgot to call this db.init app. Let's call db.init app and let's now run this. And yes, we have this instance which has project.db. Amazing. Amazing. So project.db is a SQLite database that we are using. Now what we'll do is we will simply close this and we'll start coding. So the very first thing that I need is get all nodes. And in order to get all the nodes, I will simply go to query the data. And in order to query the data, all you need to do is simply query the data by ID or get all the nodes from the database. And let's copy this. We will copy this and we will paste it here. So let's paste it here. In order to get nodes and not the users, we'll say nodes is equal to db.session.execute, db.select node and order by node.title. Let's order by node.title.scalars and we are going to return JSONify nodes, and from Flask we are going to import JSONify. So JSONify is something that you can use to convert your Python objects to JSON. Awesome. So now we'll remove this with init with app.app context, this thing, because we have already created our database. Okay, now we have this node and we are saying get all nodes. Let's see if we are able to get all the nodes. So let's run it and it says that no such table node. Okay, so there is no such table called node, which is a problem. We have already ran db.createAll, but still it is saying that there is no node inside our nodes. So the problem is that we will have to do with app.app context db.createAll after we are writing this node class. So let's do it after writing the node class. And let's try to run it now, and it automatically restarted, which means that we can refresh and we are getting a type error this time. So it says that the object of scalar type is not JSON serializable, which is not a problem. Let's see if this is JSON serializable. Chunked iterator result is not JSON serializable. Okay, no problems. Let's try to print the nodes and see what we are getting. So let's ignore this error for the time being and let's see what we are getting when we try to print the nodes. And you can see that we are getting this error, but let's see what we are getting when we try to print the nodes. And I'm searching for the print statement. It says that scalar result object at this. So let's go to Google and see how to convert scalar result object to list. And as you can see that all you need to do is simply use .all. So instead of doing this, we can say .all. And I hope that this will solve the problem. Let's refresh and yes, it solved the problem and we are getting all the nodes. So this is the way to get all the nodes. But how do we create a node? So in order to create a node, we'll have to write the API to create the node. So we'll go to quick start and we'll again go to this post method app.root. Let's copy this and see how we can write an API to create a node. Okay, so if request.method, we'll have to import request. And if request.method is post, user is equal to user, username is equal to user.form username, we'll say no, we don't want user, we need a node at this point. And since we are working with title and descriptions, we will write title and description instead of what was already written in the boilerplate. And instead of saying user, I want to call it node, and note once again and commit. And I don't want to return anything, rather I want to return a JSON. And I'll say, you know what, success is true. Thank you so much. The node has been inserted in the database, and we'll simply say /create instead of /user/create. So we'll say /create methods is equal to get and post. Now why is it giving me this error? It says that cannot be assigned to parameter troot at root. We'll find out what the problem is, but before that I want to make sure that everything else is on point. Yes, everything else is on point. All right, let's see how it is working, or whether it is working or not working. So we are going to open Postman. So let's open Postman And let's see if we are able to insert a note using this route or not. But I'm not sure why this is showing me the red button. So I'm going to suppress this warning for now, and let's come back to Postman and let's see if we are able to create localhost :3000/create, and let's send, and let's see if localhost is working or not. So localhost is not working, but we'll have to add an HTTP to make it work. So it says, okay, 5000. So it's not on 3000, it's on 5000. And let's see if it is working or not. So yeah, it is working, and it says 403 forbidden, but let's see what the problem is. So we have /create, and this is expecting a title and a description. So we are going to supply the title and description. The method is post, and in the body I'm going to say title is say Hindi, and say description is also Hindi, and let's send it and let's see what the response is. So we have no response, it says forbidden. So localhost :5000/create is not working. /create, and let's send, and yes, success is true. So yes, it is working. So we have added a note to the database. Let's see whether it is working or not. So I'll simply go to this endpoint, and it says object of type row is not JSON serializable, which is a problem. So let's find out how to solve it. So instead of doing order by, let's simply say db.select note, and let's say .all, and returns all rows in a list. And when I'm printing the notes, let's see what it is printing. So it says note 1, but it is not able to serialize it in JSON. So let's try to convert it to a list, but before that I want to make sure that why is it not JSON serializable. Flask SQLAlchemy, and as you can see that in order to fetch all the results you'll have to use fetch all. So fetch all is the method that we were looking for. Let's reload, and again it says the object of type row is not JSON serializable. So after facing this problem for quite some time, I made an observation, and the observation was that if I print the nodes db.session.execute db.select node.all, I'm getting a list of tuples, and I will have to use a for loop like this. So I'll say for note in nodes, I'll say my nodes is equal to, and I will say note 0 dot title. Or maybe note 0, that's it, and I'll append it. So you'll see what I'm doing. I'm basically creating a blank list called my notes. So my notes is a blank list, and I'm appending notes to this my notes, and at the end I will say my notes. And also sometimes what happens is that 5000 port on your computer is blocked. It is blocked by some application. This happens, and whenever this happens, all you need to do is simply change the port. I've changed my port to 5001, as you can see. And also make sure that you have this tab, a terminal with a tab, because this makes things really easy. So let's start the server, and you can see it says object of type note is not JSON serializable, no problems. So the problem is we are using an object of type note and it is not JSON serializable. So I will convert this to a list, and I'll say or maybe a dictionary. I will simply say the title is note title, note dot title, and description is note 0 dot description. So note 0 dot description, and I'll simply copy paste. So if I reload it now, you'll see that it says the site cannot be reached. Maybe the server is down, and yes, the server is down. Let's now restart, and you can see description Hindi, title Hindi. Let's try to add another note using our API. So instead of Hindi, I'll say Hindi 2, and description is also Hindi 2, and let's make it DESC. And now if I click send, you will see that if I reload this, Hindi is displayed. So there is a problem here. Let's see what the problem is. So I'm appending the nodes, but again, the nodes are not, I'm not able to pull the nodes, not sure why. So if I, okay, so I'm actually using 5000 port. I'll have to use 5001 port. It says 403 forbidden. Now if I use 500 port, 5001 port, it is working. Now if I reload, I will expect Hindi 2, DESC and Hindi 2. And if I keep on adding this, let's say 5-7 times, it says that unique constraint failed, title should be unique. So let's make it 23. And yes, now it should add another one. And if you're not able to see, in case, here is how the description looks. Okay, so Hindi 2 DESC, Hindi 2, Hindi 2 DESC, Hindi 2 3, and this is how this API is going to work. Now the next step for us is going to be hosting this API in a Linode. So let's go to a Linode account very quickly, and we are going to use SSH and the password that we were using. So here is my terminal. Let me zoom in for you so that you can see, and let's paste this. We'll type yes, and I'll type the password. All right, so root@localhost, we are inside the machine. That's a good news. Let's see if pip3 is installed or not. No, it is not. So we'll say sudo apt update, because this is a fresh machine. Okay, we cannot expect everything to be there. We'll wait, and now after waiting, we will simply see if Python is installed or not. And I'll tell you another way of accessing pip for a given version of Python. Now you'll see what I mean. So if I say Python, it's not installed. So I say or let's say Python 3. Is it installed? Yes, it is installed. So I can do something like this: Python 3 -m pip install Flask SQLAlchemy, and it says no module named pip. So I'll say Python sudo apt install Python 3 pip, which will install Python 3 pip in Ubuntu. And yes, I want to continue. Let's wait for pip to install. And once again, let me tell you, like, the code that we wrote is really very basic. It simply contains an API which is able to fetch all the nodes, and an API to create nodes. You can use delete, put, and post requests as you wish. But again, here I'm using post request to create a node, and again, a get request to fetch all the nodes. Going back to our Linode, it says which services should be restarted. I think we can restart this one, and I think we should be good. SQLAlchemy and Flask. Let's install. It says, okay, so we don't need commas. Pip install Flask, SQLAlchemy is installed. Wow, awesome. So I'm going to create a folder. Let me call this folder as Flask Linode app, something like this. I'll do ls cd into the Flask Linode app, and I'll use vim to create this main.py file. And let's copy this code and let's paste it here. And instead of saying app.run debug is equal to true, I'm going to say host is equal to 0.0.0.0, which means that this app will not run on localhost, it will run on the network, and I will be able to see all the nodes. Now let's do something like this, and let's say Python 3 main.py. I'm actually using Python 3 main.py to run this app, and this is where you can access this app. Let's try to access this, and if we are not able to access, we'll see if something could be done. As you can see that this app is running on 172.105.37.251. Can I simply go to this endpoint and go to /create and create a node? Well, let's test it out. Looks like I can, and yes, we have created a CRUD API. I should say not the CRUD API. We have created the create and read API. UND, which is update and deleted, something that can be created very easily in a very similar manner, and I will expect all of you to create that. All right, so I am feeling really excited now. Let's go to Android Studio and let's install it. So you will have to go to Android Studio and get the latest version of Android Studio for you. Android Studio Flamingo is the latest version at the time of recording this video, but this might change and you should not be scared of why this is changed. Now Android has really changed a lot, and let me tell you in which sense. I'll simply say Mac with Apple chip so that I can download Android Studio for my platform. Android has changed in a way that now we have Jetpack Compose, which is Kotlin way of creating UI in Android. And you can also use the previous way, which is the layout and XML files. But again, Jetpack Compose is really way better if you are going to create a complex Android application. I'll not download and install it, but you can download and install it. And let me tell you that it is going to take some time for you to install Android Studio. Go through the process and let me show you how it will look like once you have installed it. So this is how you can install Android Studio, and I'm firing it up. Let's create a new project and let's use empty views activity. Make sure you use empty views activity and not empty activity, because this will create a Jetpack Compose project. And if you don't know what Jetpack Compose is, and if you don't know how to use Jetpack Compose, you will be confused. So let's come back here and let's say empty views activity. Let's click on next and let me call it iNotes. iNotes is the name of the app that I'm creating. Wow, amazing. This is the package name and this is the location where it will create this project. Let's click finish. And if you're using a slower machine by any chance, let me tell you that it will take some time. Give it its time. I'm also not using a very fast machine, but not very slow one either. So things will be finished in pretty sweet spot time on my machine. So you can use this as a baseline. If you're using a very fast machine, expect things to go faster than this. If you're using slow machines, expect things to go a little bit slower than you are seeing here. Okay, let's wait for everything to set up. You can see this, it is downloading a lot of things. It is actually working to finish this project up and setting it up. But let me tell you something. If you go to activity main.xml, this is a UI and this is a Kotlin file which will be used to fetch the nodes and display on this Android activity.xml. This project is going to be really very fantastic in a way that I'm going to use a library called Retrofit to fetch the data into Android. And this is something that people get confused a lot with. I've seen a lot of Stack Overflow questions asking why and how we cannot directly fetch data in Kotlin, and if we can, how to do it and what is the optimal way to do it. So there is a library called Retrofit. And before I go into Retrofit and how to install it in your Android Studio, let me tell you something. Gradle project sync isn't progress at this point. What exactly is this Gradle? Gradle is build tool for Android. So whenever you're writing your code in Kotlin and you have your XML files is for views, like what you see in your Android phone screen. And Kotlin file is basically the logic. Now in Jetpack Compose, everything is there in Kotlin. You write your UIs in Kotlin, you write the logic in Kotlin. It is totally a different thing. But so far how Android used to work, and I will say that this will be supported even in the future. The XML files will be used to create the layouts, and the Kotlin file is simply used to write the logic. So let me show you how all these things work. And before we proceed, let me go to settings, editor, general. If you have seen my PyCharm video, you know that I love doing this. So I always change this setting to change font size with command plus mouse wheel. I'll click OK and I can now change my font size for you. As you can see that we are importing some things which are coming from Android SDK directly. You don't have to worry much about it, but let me explain this code to you. So this is the main activity. This is an activity class which is simply inheriting from app compat activity, which has some code already written in it. And then what we are overriding is a method called onCreate. Whenever the activity has created, we are saying that execute the existing onCreate method, but on top of that, also set the view to this Android activity main.xml. So what this line of code will do is go to activity main.xml, read all the UI content, and it will render it on the screen. Okay, so this is how this activity main.xml works. Now our task is to simply fetch the data from Linode and render it in the UI. So let me tell you what this module app and project inodes build.gradle file is. So now if you want to use any dependency in Android, you must explicitly mention it here. As you can see that this file is using all these dependencies, but I want to make sure that I am able to use Retrofit. So let me go to Google, because let me be very honest here, I don't remember all the code for how to use Retrofit and all those things. So let me go to Google and I'll say how to fetch data from Kotlin using Retrofit. Okay, and I'll find some link to go to, and I'm simply searching for some good link. And yeah, easy guide to set up Retrofit. Let's follow this and let's see if we get any errors or something. I will simply tell you how to fix those. So they are saying that download Retrofit, go to this website and get the latest version of Retrofit to install it. We'll go to the GitHub page and see what the latest version is. And let me tell you that all you need to do is use this line. Where is the line? Okay, 2.9.0 is the version. So I'll simply give my Android app the permission to simply use the internet. I think we are good here. So I'll simply copy the code and I'll go to Android manifest.xml. This is a manifest file for your Android app. This contains all the information about your app. For example, what the app icon is going to be and how your app is going to look like when you are installing it on a device. I want to make sure that I give permission to use internet to my Android app. So users permission is a tag which we use in this XML file to make sure that our Android app is able to use the internet. Otherwise we are going to get an error. Okay, so we are indeed able to use internet. Now I'll simply copy this and also this. So these are two dependencies that we need to install, and just like we use pip install with our Python app, we'll have to use implementation with our Android app. So let's copy this, let's paste it here, and also let me copy this one, the version number. The version number is 2.9.0. So let me write it directly here because it will be easy for me to directly punch in the version number instead of saying root project dot version number or something. Okay, and now once you have put in all the implementations here, you need to click sync now, which will simply download everything and sync your Gradle and simply download and install everything for you. Now I'll come back to my activity main.xml, which has a hello world text. Let's run this Android app. I'll go to device manager and I'll create a device. I'll click on create a device. You can select phone and Pixel 5, any phone is fine. Next, and finish. This will create a device called Pixel 5 API 34. I already have a device, but I wanted to make sure that you guys are able to follow along and create a device. So you'll have to create a device and then you can say, I want to run my app on Pixel 5 API 34. Let's try to run my app on this device. It will take some time for sure, and if you are using a slower PC, let me tell you, it is going to take even more time. And the first run is usually very slow, but these days I'm pretty impressed with how Android Studio is working. Android Studio has really improved when it comes to performance. And is my device even running? So it is running here, it seems. Gradle build is running. We'll have to wait for some time, and in the meantime I'll share the plan with you. So the plan is that we are going to use a constraint layout inside of a recycler, a constraint layout and a recycler view inside the constraint layout. Let me tell you what all these things mean. So we are going to use a recycler view, which will simply have some scrollable text. And then below that, I'm going to simply add a button and a text box for people to get a chance to add a note. As you can see that our device is working. I'm pretty excited and happy at the same time that it worked. And since I'm using a recorder and then the VS Code is open, the Flask server is running, Postman is running, Android Studio in itself is a very heavy piece of software. It is actually installing the app and the device is starting up. It will take some time. So let me stop everything. Let me stop the recording and let me get back once all these things settle. All right, so everything is working at this point, and let me pull this device out. So yeah, I can undock it. And this is how the app is looking at this point. And the best part about this thing is that you can always click this hot reload and it will actually reload your app on this device again. And it is really fast. Let me tell you, it is faster than it used to be a few years back. So we are already inside a constant layout. Let me add a recycler view. Let me delete this. I don't want this text box anymore. Let's add a recycler view. So this is a recycler view. So as you can see, this is how my app is looking. This is the constraint layout. Let me give it a constraint. So constraint layout is a very basic layout in Android, which is simply used to add some items. And if I resize it, I should be able to get some space. So let's resize it. So as you can see, the layout height is 381 dp and width is, I want to make the width as match parent. So or maybe wrap content. It will take as much space as required, and you can always make sure that this constraint is applied. So if you do something like this, your app is basically tied with a string to the walls of this app basically, or any layout for that matter. So this is how constraint layout basically works. So these are the items, and you can also reduce the height of this just to make sure that everything is smooth. And I can also remove this constraint so that everything can go at the top. And I think I am using some padding. I think I can use padding top. Let me see if I can use padding. So clip to padding, and as you can see, I can make it 16 and it will get some padding from the top. Let's make it 32 and let's see if we are able to get the padding. Yes, we are able to get the padding. And you can add a text box here, and you can make your UI even better than how it is looking here. Okay, let's come back to a Kotlin file and let's see if everything is working as expected. Let me close this as well so that I have some space and I am able to view the code. And just like this tutorial says that create a data class. So we'll have to create a data class. You can always move this data class to a separate file, but I'm using the same file to accommodate my data class, since it's a very basic node data class and it has a title and it has a description. So a node class has a title and a description. And once again, we are going to use Retrofit. So we will use API interface. So this is the interface that we are going to use, and we are going to change the code accordingly. So this is an interface, and the base URL is going to be the URL that our VPS is holding. All right, so we have set this URL, we have done everything. Let's now see how we can import all these things. So I'll simply press Alt Enter to import Retrofit, and again to import JSON Converter Factory, I'll again press Alt Enter, and it should import JSON Converter Factory. So Alt Enter. Yes, it has imported everything. And instead of saying movie, I'll say note. And again, we are going to import this call. Alt Enter. We'll import it from Retrofit 2. And the same for get, we are going to import it. Everything is looking fine at this point, and we have everything imported. Let's now see if we are able to get everything at place or not. So we have created this create function, and now the next step is to simply create or rather get the data from our API interface. So let's copy this code, which will simply fetch the data from our URL, and also we can use this code to populate the recycler view. So let's use this code to populate the recycler view, and inside our on create, I'm going to paste this code. Let's also import everything. So the recycler view part, all these things are not working. So we'll have to give recycler view ID to our XML. So this is the recycler view. Let's give it an ID called recycler view. So I'm putting the ID as recycler view, and it should now work. So let's see if we are able to import everything. So Alt Enter to import linear layout manager, and also we are going to import the recycler adapter. So now we are going to again import everything by pressing Alt Enter, and I want to make sure that we import the callback from Retrofit. So Alt Enter, let's import it from Retrofit, and also fix this. So in order to get this done, we will have to make sure that we have a recycler view adapter. So we are going to select this, and we are going to create a class, extract to separate file, and this is the target destination directory. This is the destination package. Okay, so we have a class called recycler view adapter, and let's copy this code. This is not the code for recycler view adapter. Actually, we will have to find it here. So I'm simply looking for the code for recycler view adapter. Let's copy this. And looks like this code is written in Java. We'll have to find recycler view code Kotlin. We are not going to use Jetpack Compose. We are going to simply use the Kotlin's custom adapter. So let's copy this and let's paste it. And I'm going to replace this custom adapter with recycler adapter. And let's import view. Alt Enter to import. Let's import text view, alt enter to import. Text view is also imported, everything looks good. And now we'll have to make sure that we have this layout as well. So let's create this layout. So what we'll do is we'll create a text row item.xml file. And where do we create this XML file? We are going to create this XML file here in the layout. So we are going to say new layout resource file, and let's name it the same thing, text underscore row underscore item. So let's say text underscore row underscore item, and let's say okay. And we are going to copy this and paste this like this, and let's paste it in the XML file. So I'll simply go to code and I'm going to paste this. So let's paste this and let's see what the problem is. And instead of constraint layout, I want to make sure that we are using frame layout. And instead of using this element text string, I'm going to say title. Okay. And once again, I'm going to use another text view and I'm going to call it text view 2. And again, it will be description. Let's come back to our recycler adapter.kt file and let's see what the problem with this file now is. So let's import view group by pressing alt enter and layout inflator. And once again, let's see if we are able to get the text view. So text view is equal to this. Okay, everything is looking good at this point. Now we'll simply import this recycler adapter. So I'll say recycler adapter, simply import this. And I think it has already imported the recycler adapter. So this is a recycler adapter file which I'm using, and this is something that I got from Android developers documentation. So from the Android developer documentation, you can get this recycler view adapter. This is simply an adapter which is taking a view holder and it has some overridden methods which have their own tasks. As you can see, this method is responsible for creating new views. This one is responsible for replacing the content of a view. What I've done here is I have said inside a text view, you simply populate the title, and let's also populate the description for text view 2. And this is a new layout which I've created inside of layout. And here I have this text view and text view 2. So these are the two text views which I've created. And if I show you the layout, it looks something like this. So this is the layout which I've created, and you can easily create it using the constraint layout. Okay. So coming back to our recycler adapter and main activity.kt, this is how you use the recycler view adapters. So the very first thing that you want to do is simply create a new recycler view and then simply go to API interface and get movies as the function name. Now I'll replace this get movies with get notes because we are getting notes and not movies. So I just want to make sure that the names that we are using are compatible. Okay. So this is simply getting all the notes from our API, and here we are simply populating the recycler view. So we are saying that this is a recycler adapter and we are using the linear layout manager, and we are simply saying that this recycler view should use this layout manager and this custom adapter, and that's all. If the API request somehow fails, we'll log the message to the console. And another thing that you might want to do is simply add this Android uses clear text traffic is equal to true, because this is required if you are using a non-HTTPS connection. Okay, let's run this. Let's see how our app looks like. So here we are getting an error, text view 2 is unsolved reference. Okay, so it says text view 2 is not present. Let me see what the problem is. So text view is an ID and text view 2 is an ID. So we should be capital. Okay, so view holder dot text view 2 dot text. Okay, let me see what the problem is. So we have this text view 2 here, but I'm not sure why it is not working. So here we'll have to create another text view 2 like this, and also we'll have to say text view 2 is equal to r.id.text view 2, and it should work now. Let's see if we are able to build the app. Do not worry, I'll share all the code with you and you will get this app and the Flask app as well. And it seems that everything is working, and yes, it is launching the main activity. I just want to see if we are able to fetch the data or not. And yes, we are able to fetch the data, as you can see. Now this might not be the best layout out there, but again, we have created a custom API and used it with Android, and anybody can scroll and use this application. Let me go back to Android Studio, or rather let me go back to my Postman, and let me say test title. And let me send this and see if I am able to see the test title upon relaunching of this app. So I'm relaunching this app. I want to make sure that I see text title. Okay, so let me search for test title. Yes, here is the test title, which means that this is connected to our data store. Amazing. So I'll make sure that I give the recycler adapter.kt and main activity.kt files to you. I hope you like this tutorial. We have created an API in Flask, and then we have hosted it using Android Studio. In fact, we have integrated it with an app. Now there are a lot of things that could be done with this adapter. There are a lot of design changes that you can make to this app, but you got the point, you got the basics. I hope you like this video. Thank you so much guys for watching this video, and I will see you next time.